Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, so like she said, I'm Lauren Laumas. I'm the Distance Services and Research Librarian at Asbury University. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Can everyone see my PowerPoint here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's not in presenter mode, or it's in, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Um, yeah, so I'm basically just going to be sharing 5 different techniques I've used for teaching citation style guide lessons. And these techniques can kind of apply to any citation style, but I tend to teach a lot of MLA. So I'm going to be using MLA the most for these examples, but yeah, I'll get into it. And just to give you a little bit of context of where I work at Asbury University. It's a private Christian liberal arts university. We have about 1,900 students, which is kind of big for us, actually. But about 500 or so are online. Most of them are in person, about 1,300. And most of them are undergraduates. We only have about 300 graduate students. And I pulled the data for this past school year, and it looks like between me and it's just me and one other librarian, my colleague Beth Groves. So between the two of us, we taught 112 total instruction sessions, and I taught 68, and 53 were in person and 15 were online. And I know I am the distance services and research librarian, so obviously distance services is online students, but we kind of just split up the instruction between the two of us. And I think also just because we have fewer online classes in general, that's probably why that number is a lot lower than the in-person classes. So that's just to say that I teach in-person classes and I teach online as well. So, and probably like a lot of you all, we rarely ever go into a class more than once per semester. So usually we just get one class period to teach everything that needs to be known about how to cite sources. And that's pretty much it. So we get that one 50-minute class session or, an hour and 15 or so, and that's it. Typically, it seems like our on-campus classes tend to be freshman level and English department classes. So I think that's why I teach MLA so much. But our online classes that we go into tend to be graduate level and education or communication type classes, it seems like. And part of my reason for making this presentation is just because I feel like I have kind of a hard time sometimes with finding lesson plans for geared towards like academic librarians, a lot of lesson plans for citation style guides, like teaching those. A lot of them are geared towards K-12 teachers, which is great, and sometimes they're still helpful, but a K-12 teacher typically is going to be teaching an entire semester or entire school year with the same students, so they could kind of teach the style guide gradually over the course of a week potentially, whereas we just get the one class period usually. So it's a very different style of teaching, in my opinion. So hopefully this presentation kind of gives you some ideas for how to cover the very large amount of information that there is on how to cite sources in a certain style, while also kind of giving some opportunities for students to practice during your lesson. And obviously you probably will want to tweak things that I share. But yeah, it can be difficult when every student kind of brings a different amount of pre-knowledge to the classroom. I feel like typically I kind of informally will ask, how many of you all have used MLA before or kind of at least aware of what it is? And people are kind of like, we've used it a little bit. But nobody seems like they're super like, oh yeah, we've used this a lot before. It's very rare for me to get really enthusiastic, like, yes, we've definitely used this. So it's definitely kind of tricky when students are kind of coming to college with just not a whole lot of practice with the citation style yet. So you're kind of having to start with scratch with a lot of people. But some students might have a lot of experience. You just never know what you're going to get. And like I said, it can be difficult to cover just like everything that needs to be known about full citations and everything about in-text citations and even like paper formatting to cover all of that in one session while also having some time for students to practice as well. It's hard to kind of balance, lecturing and covering all the content with also giving opportunities for students to practice and get feedback from you. So just some general thoughts before I get into it. I definitely think if you have a class for just one session, it's good if you can try to limit the number of new applications and activities you introduce to them. So if you can try to have them just use Padlet or just use Jamboard, I think that's the best in my opinion. So they're not having to learn two different types of technology within the same class period. If you can just have them do one or the other. And you can always supplement with some just traditional hand raising and think, pair, share. Or if you're online, just like responding in the chat type responses. And like I said, I'll be using MLA mainly as the example today, but so these are kind of the 5 techniques I'll be getting into. So I'll go ahead and get into the first one, which is what I call citation quick guides, and also like my MLA presentation slides that I use. And if you have any questions at any point, feel free to type in the chat, or you can unmute. Either way is fine. But so whenever I teach any kind of citation style, I always use presentation slides with it, as probably a lot of us do. I always, after the session, will share the guide, the slides as a PDF with the professor. I'll email it as a PDF to the professor and say, you can share this PDF with your students, and so that they can have something to refer to later. So that's kind of how I try to get the PDF to the students. I kind of do it in an indirect way, I guess, by sharing with the professor first. So I always do that with the presentation slides I make. But sometimes I also will share this quick guide I made, and I'll show both of these more up close in a second. But the quick guide that I made is basically the same information I have in my presentation slides on MLA, but it's just kind of in more of a streamlined PDF form. I felt like it would be a little bit more clear to read because you're not having to like switch between different slides and stuff like that. If you have it all just in one PDF, that's just a few pages, I feel like it's a little bit easier to look at. So that's why I designed that quick guide as well. So sometimes I will print the quick guide and distribute it in class. I haven't done that a whole lot with printing out presentation slides because they tend to be just pages and pages and pages long, but the quick guide is a little bit more succinct, so it's a little bit easier to print out and distribute. But I definitely also will share the PDF of the quick guide with the professor, who can share it with the students. So basically, I think anytime you make any kind of presentation slides on a citation style or any kind of like a quick guide like that, I think it's good if you can try to provide all the basic information on what to include in full citations, in-text citations, and if you can also give examples of each of these, like in real, using like actual articles and book examples, what those citations might look like. I think it's good if you can try to provide too much information than not enough, just because it's good if you can have something that students can kind of look through in more detail later on, just in case there's always those weird exceptions that come up, like a student might be trying to cite a book that has no author, for example. So having all those extra examples can be good for them to refer to later on as they actually write their paper. And I definitely think it's good if you can give yourself plenty of time to create your MLA slides or guide before you distribute them, because I definitely have kind of gotten in a hurry sometimes with making slides on a certain citation style. And if it's like a citation style I haven't taught in a long time, like I teach MLA so often that like when I have to switch over to APA, sometimes I have to like really like try to remember APA. It's not like I've forgotten, but I just get so into like MLA that I kind of have to like reteach myself APA just to remind myself like, okay, APA, we put the year in parentheses and all that stuff. But anyways, so definitely, I think distributing your slides with the students in some way, like sharing them as a PDF, and same for the quick guide, is definitely a way that you can kind of batch answer a lot of what if questions, like what if I have to cite a YouTube video? What if I have to, do this or that? And I like having these kinds of presentation slides or a quick guide to refer to when I'm in a reference meeting with a student, because sometimes I have students who want to just kind of go over their works cited and make sure that they cited things correctly. So it's good if I can have like some examples I can like put out in front of them and we can kind of look through what they have and make sure it matches up. So let me go ahead and share. I'll go to my next tab over here. And I'm not going to go through all these slides on my MLA presentation, but this is like typically the presentation I use for teaching MLA citations right here. So just in a nutshell, I typically start with a discussion on why we cite sources, and we kind of talk about that on a Padlet. So we're just talking about why do we bother with citing sources in general at first. And then that's kind of when I get into basically the details on how to cite full citations for MLA. And I know this is a lot of information on one slide, and I thought about maybe separating this into multiple slides. I might try doing that at some point, but I usually kind of cover the first 4 elements of an MLA citation and how to format those elements in a nutshell. And then I talk about the next like 5 to 8 or so of what goes into a full citation here. And I talk about like the capitalization rules and the punctuation and things like that. And then I go into an example. So I show them that this is everything you need for a full MLA citation. This is on a title page of an article, but it's not in MLA format yet. So then the next slide I show this is what it would look like in MLA format. I kind of just explain each element, like how it's supposed to look. We italicize the title of the container. We put the title of the article in quotes, things like that. And then I usually show another example just to show, I like to have it kind of labeled out like this. And this is a kind of a science, more of a science-oriented paper. And I know we usually don't use MLA for science, but I just kind of wanted to show them like, you can use MLA really for any field. Obviously, MLA is not as required in the sciences, but in theory, you could use it for really any field. It doesn't have to be for an English class. And then I kind of go into some practice. I have them, we'll kind of actually look at this a little bit later on, but I have them label the different elements within the citation. And then these are some slides I include that I don't actually go over in class. This is like the point where I'm like, okay, I have a few more slides that I'm not going to go over because we don't have time, but I will include these. These are in the presentation. So when your professor shares this presentation with you, you can look at these slides later. And these slides have examples on different ways of citing books, like a chapter in a book or a book with no author, or how to cite films or TV episodes, YouTube videos, website articles. So some of these obviously come up more often than others, but I get a lot of questions on just, all of these different things. Like we have a lot of media comms students, so they may have to cite films quite a bit. You just never know. So I just throw these in just in case, but I don't go over every single one in class just because there's just not enough time, but they're there for them to refer to later when their professor shares the presentation with them. And then and then I always show them Purdue OWL's website. Like I just say, like they have a lot more examples there and explanations. Their website's really great. It has a lot of resources on it. So, and then I get into how to do in-text citations for MLA. So this is just like the basics of what to include, the author last name and the page number. And then usually while I'm on the slide, I get a question about, oh, what if there is no page number? So then I definitely show them this next slide about how to do it if there's no page number or no title. And then from there, I usually don't go over the slide, but again, you just never know. Sometimes it comes up how to do in-text citations for films and poetry and plays and things like that. So basically having this for them to refer to later is just kind of extra information just in case it comes up for their classes. You just never know. And then we do some in-text citation practice, which I'll kind of show a little bit later on. And I actually, at the very end of this presentation, will show them how to use a full citation of an article to find that article in one of our databases. So we kind of get a little bit of introductory database searching practice with this part of the citation, or sorry, of the presentation. But that's basically what my MLA slides look like in a nutshell. So like I said, it's kind of about trying to cover the basics of the most essential parts of what goes into an MLA citation. But I think it's good, like I said, if you can try to provide some more slides just for those other extra scenarios that may come up or may not come up, like citing a blog article and things like that. You just never know, those may come up or not, but it can always be something that students can refer to later if you just kind of provide those extra slides for them. And I'll also show the quick guide I made for MLA is here. So this quick guide I made is pretty much the same information as what's in my MLA slides, more or less. But like I said, I felt like having it in a PDF format that's just 4 pages long total. It just is a little bit more streamlined than having a bunch of slides to go through. And it's a little bit easier to print off, in my opinion, too, if you want to print and distribute this. So basically at the top of this guide, I have how to do in-text citations in a nutshell. And then I have the elements of a full MLA citation. And then I have these templates that I created. Basically, like in theory, you could copy and paste, for example, book with no author. You could copy and paste that into your paper and then just like delete out the where it says book title and actually type the title of the book in italics and things like that. You could kind of just substitute the elements of what you're trying to cite there. But I actually have examples at the end of each of these I'll show in a second. But I have some more information of how to do in-text citations. These are kind of the weird situations that come up, like what if there's no author and things like that. But the last 2 pages are just an example works cited that I have labeled. So each of the templates that I showed above has an example down here that I have labeled. So this is like a book with an editor and multiple authors, or this is how to cite a scholarly article and things of that nature. So sometimes I feel like it's a little bit easier if you actually see examples of this in action, because that way it's like you can kind of see how someone else has already done it with another source, and then you can kind of compare it and use that for the source that you're trying to cite. So anyway, so basically, I think that this quick guide is especially good if you, like I said, just kind of need something a little bit shorter to print out than a bunch of slides. If you want to distribute that to students in class so that they have something to take with them, or I gave them this quick guide when they were doing an activity that I'll show in a second. So it was kind of, it was something that they could use and refer to while they were building a citation in class. So that's another idea. But that's basically in a nutshell what I use for those. Let me see if I can back to full screen. So I think that if you share your slides on MLA and or if you share a quick guide on it with students, I think the pro of doing that is just that it covers a lot of information that students can use to refer to later when they're actually writing their paper and citing their sources. But obviously going over presentation slides like that, it can take a lot of time. It is a lot of talking, and so it's not quite as interactive as having like them build the citation out. So definitely that's kind of where you have to really balance like how much to cover and how much explaining you're going to do with how much of an interactive activity you're going to have them do. And like I said, I usually share this as a PDF with the professor, and they can share the PDF with their through the LMS. But you can also consider maybe having a QR code that students can scan themselves. They want to just scan the QR code and save the slides directly to their Google Drive or to their OneDrive, things of that nature. That's another idea. And next technique I've used is the citation building Padlet that I'll show in a second. And basically, with this citation building Padlet, my reasoning behind making this was just to give students some practice with building a citation in real time and give some be able to give them some feedback on the MLA citation that they built. So the idea for this Padlet kind of came this past spring when I had a professor of an English 110 class who wanted me to review MLA during session 2. So this is one of those rare situations where we actually go into a class 2 different times in the semester. The English 110 classes have it required in their syllabus where they have to have a librarian come in 2 different class sessions. And session 1 is always where we cover how to do MLA format. Session 2 is more of just how to search in databases and things of that nature. But basically, she kind of, after session 1, she said that her students were still kind of struggling a little bit with MLA, and she just wanted me to basically review MLA format with them. So that's why I created this activity, just for the students to be able to get some more hands-on experience with citing an MLA citation. And so I'll go ahead and pull up the Padlet real quick to show what it looks like. But basically, what I had was each element of a MLA citation is over here, starting with the author and going down to the name of the database and the URL, basically. So each column is a different element of the MLA citation. This one column right here, I actually combined a few elements together just because they're really small elements. They're like the more numerical elements. So, but for the most part, each of these columns is a different part of an MLA citation. And these colorful boxes below, I basically have an example article here where I basically, like, for the author of this article, for example, I have that in MLA format and I have the title in MLA format, so on and so forth. So it's basically an MLA citation that has been kind of spliced out, like it's been kind of separated into different columns based on what the element is. And what I had the students do basically was this very first part here, this very first box is image I took, just a screenshot of an article. And I told students that this has all the information you need for an MLA citation, except it doesn't have the name of the database I got this from. And so I just told them I got this from a database called ERIC, ERIC in all caps. So basically what I had them do was I said that you could do this individually or in groups of 2 to 4, but I told them that you're going to take the information that's here and you're going to put this in MLA format, except I just had them choose 2 columns. Like I said, either choose the 2 columns that have a green box or the 2 columns with the with a blue box or 2 with the orange boxes. So I didn't have every group do every column just because I felt like that might take up too much time. I was just a little bit worried about running out of time. So it's up to you if you wanted to do this kind of activity. You could have them do all of the columns, or you could have different groups choose different ones that you want. But basically, if a group, for example, chose to do the green boxes, then they would basically look at this image of this article here, and they would just put the author's name. They would click on the plus sign under author, and where it says write something fantastic, they would write the author names of this article in MLA format and then hit publish. And then basically they just do the same thing with the title. And so so I gave students some time to do that. And then when they were finished, then I just kind of reviewed. I looked at the posts. We looked at them together on the projector, and I kind of pointed out ones that had done the format correctly. And then with some of them, I was like, this is almost correct. Just make sure that there's a period at the end. But it was completely anonymous. So nobody was being like directly called out or anything. So it was kind of a way to like anonymously give feedback. Like, sometimes, it'd be like, yes, this is the correct format for the most part, but it just needs to be in quotation marks, but otherwise that's great, things like that. So I felt like it was a way for students to kind of get a little practice with MLA citations without having to take up too much time. Because like I said, I was afraid if they did if every group did every element of the citation, I was afraid that take up too much time. So, and I also would recommend if you do something like that, because it's a little bit of a weird way of looking at MLA citation, having it kind of broken out across different columns. It's good if you can try to show the MLA citation built out kind of like on another slide. Like I showed them this after we reviewed the Padlet together. I showed them the MLA citation that they were supposed to make, but this is a little bit more like what it might look like at the end of a paper, except obviously I have it labeled with the different elements just to kind of reiterate how it should look like. But it's good if you can kind of show them the end result at the very end of this activity. So, so I think kind of the pro of this oh, sorry, does someone have a question?
Oh yes, Lauren, I was just going to ask, are you willing to share links to these Padlets for us to use as to reference ourselves?
Yeah, I definitely can. I think there's a way I can share it to where like you can have your own copy that you can tweak. So yeah, if anyone wants that, then I have my email at the end, so feel free to email me if
Okay,
you want.
wonderful. Thank you.
No problem. So yeah, I think kind of the pro of this is, like I said, if you kind of let groups kind of choose the elements that they're most comfortable with, then you can have them do those, and then kind of they can get feedback and learn from their peers when it comes to the other elements. And obviously, like I said, this is kind of a weird way of building out an MLA citation. So I think that's kind of the con. It's kind of a weird way of looking at one. So like I said, make sure that you show the full citation at the very end. You could modify this by having like index cards or post-it notes that you put on the board for each element of the citation. That's kind of another idea. Each group could have a different element or something like that. And you could also try different whiteboard software like Jamboard or something like that. So that's just another idea. And so this is the third technique I've used, which is just in-text citation practice. And kind of the goals behind this is just to have students kind of figure out what they need to put in the parentheses at the end of a sentence or at the end of a quote or paraphrasing for the in-text citation. So sometimes I think of it as like there's that party game called Pin the Tail on the Donkey. It's kind of like pin the in-text citation on the sentence. So it's good if you can try to have examples where there's like one sentence might have the author's last name earlier on in the sentence, and then another sentence might not mention the author's last name or page number or anything like that in it. So it's good to have different like variety of different kinds of quotes and formatting and things like that. So students can kind of see what it might look like in different situations. And you can also kind of combine this with a lesson on paraphrasing. I'll show an example of how I've done that. But I always try to emphasize that paraphrasing is when you change the structure and the wording, and you also shorten what someone else said. So you're trying to use fewer words, and a different structure to basically say the same thing. And you also give credit, like you also have the in-text citation at the end. So I think even though in-text citations are pretty simple, it can still be good to have some practice with them because students tend to have a lot of questions. And so this is kind of essentially what I do. It's pretty basic, but I just kind of show this quote by John Green. And then at the bottom here, I give them more than enough information just to try to throw them off a little bit. I give them the author name, the book title, the year, and the page number of the quote. And for MLA format, I ask them what goes in the in-text citation. And this is usually just like what I do like out loud. You could do it more like I think pair share, but either way, I just have students kind of answer like what they would put in there. And we basically, ends up just being green 313. Sometimes before I get to the slide though, when I'm on the previous one, I might ask, do we need a comma after green? Just to throw them off. And luckily, they usually catch on and they're like, no, not for MLA format. So yeah, I try to show them, emphasize what the punctuation should be as well as what should go in the in-text citation. And sometimes I just kind of go ahead and show them what it would look like differently if you had the author's last name earlier in the sentence, but you could have like some more practice where you just give them different scenarios and have them make the in-text citation in different ways. But this is also kind of what I've done before too. Sometimes I will give a quote. This is one is actually for APA format. So I'll give what the original quote is, and then I'll give them two different examples of paraphrasing. And basically, I'll have students kind of think pair share, like which one is the better way of paraphrasing this quote. And hopefully they catch on and they see that example one does not even have an in-text citation, so it would be plagiarism. But I also will talk to them about how with example one, it also just doesn't really change the wording and structure enough for it to be good paraphrasing. So it's example one is really not that great all around. So you can also have them like on a Padlet or something, you could have the students do their own paraphrasing and kind of discuss it from there. Like, it just depends on how much time you have, because again, we have time constraints, so we have to consider that as well. But I think having this any kind of like in-text citation practice is good if you can try to give different scenarios for different types of quoting situations. I definitely think, though, that the con of having some in-text citation practice is just that full citations are so complex, and there's so many different rules, and you end up spending so much time on them that it can be hard to find time for in-text citation practice within your lesson. So I tend to get kind of rushed when I get to the in-text citation part, because we've spent so much time on the full citations that there's just not a whole lot of time for anything else. But I definitely think you could try to modify this by possibly doing like anything like a index card that groups pinned to the end of a sentence. Or you could have like the quote on the projector, like you have a series of quotes on the projector, and for each one, maybe students and groups write on a dry erase board, like on the little dry erase board, like what should go in the in-text citation, and then hold it up or something like that. Those are just different ideas. I haven't done those, but just more ideas of what you could do. And I also think that you could also do something where you have Padlets, and maybe each group gets a different Padlet with a different quote or a different series of quotes that they make the in-text citations for. So just other ideas you could consider doing. And next part, I call it the citation element scavenger hunt. It's probably more exciting than what it really is, but it's I do like to call it that. Basically, this is a little bit easier, a little bit quicker than having students actually build out a citation. Basically, the goal is just for students to look at a full citation and be able to identify what the elements are. So who is the author? What is the title? What's the volume number? Things like that. It's a way that students can kind of understand what the structure of a citation is a little bit more. And you can also go on from there and kind of show, like I mentioned this earlier, like sometimes I go on to show like how to use a full citation to find that article in a database in different ways. So you could kind of combine this with database searching a little bit too, if you wanted to go on from there. So definitely it takes less time to do this. It's especially helpful if you have, if you teach any classes that have a reading list that doesn't have everything linked, because if you show students how to use a full citation to find the article in one of your databases, then you're kind of giving them that skill to be able to go on and actually find their readings to do for that class. So, and also if you do this, make sure that if you list the elements on the screen like I do, you'll see what I mean in a second, but make sure that you scramble up the elements, because it will be too easy if you don't do that. I learned that the hard way. But basically what I do is I usually show them, this is kind of one of the examples I showed earlier. So this is an MLA citation. I just kind of review what goes in an MLA citation, in what order and things like that. And then after that, I show them this slide. This is a different citation, and I scrambled up the elements up here. And I basically just kind of have students like raise their hand and just identify who is the author, what's the title, what's the year, what's the publication date. I just kind of have them do it that way, kind of informally. So they're basically just trying to identify what all the elements are within this particular citation. So John Agresto is the author, Academic Search Complete is the database, things like that. And sometimes there's elements that students struggle with a little bit more, like the issue number, the NO period, for sometimes, if students aren't very familiar with that, they can get a little bit stumped. So it kind of gives me the opportunity to be like, just remember that for the issue number, we always look for whatever says NO period, and then there's a number. So that's how the issue number is always formatted, to just kind of clarify those things. I think that definitely this would not take as long as building a citation from scratch, but obviously the con is just that it's less interactive. It's a little bit less hands-on this way. So, you have to just kind of balance and see, like, if your lesson, like if you just don't really have enough time for students to build out an MLA citation from scratch, then this is probably the next best thing, in my opinion. You could always do something where you like think pair share this part, or you could have like each group have maybe give each group a different citation, or maybe everyone has the same. Either way, you could give groups a printed out citation on a piece of paper, and they have to put boxes around each part of the citation and label what the elements are. Like this is the title, this is the author, things like that. So that's just another idea of what you could do. And I haven't used this Padlet yet, but I actually made this recently. I'm thinking of possibly using this Padlet here. Basically, this Padlet is kind of the inverse of the Padlet that we looked at earlier. In this situation, I have each element of a full citation in a different column of this Padlet here. So basically what students would do is under each element, they would click the plus sign and identify like, this is the title, or sorry, this is the author. And then for the second one, like, this is the title. Like in theory, like they would just look at this citation, and for each element in each column, they would identify what this is. Like, this is the journal, this is the volume number. And you could scramble it up. This one I have in order of what an actual MLA citation might look like. But if you wanted to make it a little bit harder, you could scramble it up if you want. So that's just an idea of something else you could do. I haven't used this one yet, but that is something I'm considering doing. And you could do it to where like maybe you split students into 6 groups, and then you have like 3 different Padlets. And so each group will get one of 3 Padlets, and then you only have 3 Padlets to go over at the end to review. That's just another idea, but and this is the last thing I do, kind of the last activity I use for teaching citation style guides. So I don't know about you all, how common this is. I feel like it's probably pretty common, but we have a cite button in our databases. So basically for pretty much all our databases, as far as I know, you're able to hit the cite button, and then it will create a machine generated citation for you. But there's always things that you have to correct. It's never perfect. So I like to kind of show the cite button, especially when I'm going over how to search in databases. I always show the cite button, and I always emphasize that it is definitely okay to use. You can use the cite button. You are allowed to use any kind of citation software like EasyBib, but the caveat is just that you have to know how to make sure that these citations are actually formatted correctly. So you can't just use the cite button and copy and paste and never look at the citation again. You have to actually make sure it's formatted correctly. So I basically, so I'll show real quick. I think I have it pulled up here. This is just a random article in one of our databases. So in our databases, basically the quotation marks is the cite button, and you click that and you click on MLA format, for example, and it creates citation for you. So usually when I've taught how to use the cite button, I kind of just will verbally tell them like, this is almost correct, but in this situation, we would need to italicize the journal name because that's the title of the container. And here where it says EBSCOhost is not actually the database vendor, or sorry, EBSCOhost is the database vendor. It's not the database name. So I try to emphasize that like if you got this from Asbury Scholar, then Asbury Scholar is the database name. Technically, Asbury Scholar is the name of our discovery layer. So I try to kind of tell them, if you can try to find the specific database that this came from, then that's what you would put that database name right there, and you would italicize it. So I usually just kind of out loud will tell them what they should correct. You could always have students like verbally, like, quiz them like what should be changed here, depending on how much you feel like they know the citation style at that point. But with that being said, I did kind of think of this idea. I haven't done this yet, but I will sometimes be in classes where I will be asked if I can stick around while students start doing their research. And sometimes professors are like, will tell their students, like, you have to have a source with you by the end of the class. Like, you need to find at least one source for your paper by the end of class. And so I thought of this kind of exit ticket idea. If you have a professor who wants their students to start doing research, but then also get a little bit of practice with citing sources, you could come up with an exit ticket like a Google form or a Microsoft form, for example, where basically you would demonstrate how to use the cite button in your databases. and then have students like for the source that they find by the end of their class, they would use the cite button to create a machine generated citation and then copy and paste that citation into a Google form or a Microsoft form and then correct that citation. So you want students to copy and paste the machine generated citation into the form, but then make corrections and then submit it and then get feedback. In theory, you would give them feedback through the form. There's a get feedback button on Microsoft Form where you can give students feedback on their responses and be like, yeah, you did this citation correctly, or everything was correct. Just make sure to put the title in quotes or whatever. You can do that kind of feedback. So I haven't done that exit ticket idea before, like I said, but it's just something I was thinking about. It's just kind of a little way to get some more practice with citing sources. But like I said, it could, if you do this exit ticket idea, if you're giving students, like if you have 30 students to give feedback to, then that might be a lot of like extra work later on. So that's kind of the con of that. But anytime that you show how to use cite buttons and how to be like vigilant about making sure that the formatting is correct, like it does kind of help students understand like it is okay to use this kind of citation style software. Just make sure that you're using it responsibly, basically. So I know I'm running a little bit low on time, but I think that's pretty much what I have for the most part. And just want to see if anyone has any questions for me, or does anyone else have any related ideas or just other ideas in general, like other things that you use for teaching style guides and citations and how to do full citations, things like that. Does anyone else have any ideas you'd like to share that you like to do? And if you want any resources I mentioned, like any of the Padlets or the quick guide I made or anything like that, you're welcome to email me if you'd like any of these resources. So, so any questions or thoughts or anything?
So Lauren, your librarians have to do all of the the style guide teaching as well as the how to find resources. So you're doing like both the job of a typical maybe writing center plus the traditional librarianship as well?
Yeah, so that is a good question. Kind of here, I think that we sort of understand like the citation style guide part as far as like at least like mainly the citations themselves, like that is kind of like within our domain. It tends to be, I'm sure that the writing center probably helps with that a little bit too. I think the writing center probably helps a little bit more once it starts getting into like the general paper formatting, because I will teach that a little bit, but when it gets into like make sure that everything has a half-inch indent and double spacing, things like that, like I will sometimes kind of talk about that a little bit, but I think when it gets into like a little bit more of like the writing style format and things like that, that's a little bit more, I think, what the writing center does. So yeah, so I guess it just kind of has fallen under our umbrella as far as like full citations and in-text citations. That is kind of like what we do teach here as librarians. So
Okay, gotcha. That is a lot to have to do in one session. You were not kidding. So,
right, yeah.
do you
Um,
have any feedback from students about, how helpful it is like to them? I mean, do you do any after, I guess, after instruction assessment with students?
That's probably something I could do. I could have a survey or something like that, to ask students for feedback. I felt like, generally, like after I had them build out the citation, for that citation building Padlet, I think that's something I probably will do a little bit more often because I felt like, a lot of students kind of were able to, they seemed like they were able to walk away feeling a little more confident. I got like a lot more questions after that Padlet about MLA format, like how to do full citations and things like that. And I think that was kind of a good thing because I think they were kind of thinking, okay, now I have some experience, some more experience, but let me just make sure I clarify these things before I continue on with my paper. And I think that kind of the extra questions actually were, I think that was kind of a good sign in a way. So, but yeah, I could probably ask them a little more directly to let's see if I'm teaching an online class. Let's see. So I do a lot of just like a lot of online classes I teach. Sorry, I know we're running a little on time, but the online classes I teach tend
You're
to
fine.
be like um they're pretty small, so I kind of just have them like respond in the chat quite a bit, or I use Padlet quite a bit, or they can unmute themselves. Like for example, with the scavenger hunt thing, I kind of just have them unmute and say what the different elements are. Sometimes like if you have a pretty big online class, you could do breakout rooms and things like that, but I almost always have a class that's less than 10 students, so it's kind of just like pretty informal, like you can respond in the chat or unmute yourself, things like that. But I think Padlet especially is good. It's really good for in-person or online, but I think especially online to kind of keep everything organized for people. So yeah, so that's probably what I would do.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm checking the chat. I know you are too. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea, getting the scores for the paper later on. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely a good way to collect data.
Well, everybody, we're about to break for lunch, but we're going to come back at 1 o'clock for object-based instruction with Courtney Stein and Trish Blair from the University of Louisville. Thank you so much, Lauren, for sharing with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.